Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste and welcome all to the 6-day international webinar on yoga, current trends and research conducted by the Department of Yogic Sciences and Holistic Health of Kavikala Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Ramtek, in association with Indic Academy. This webinar is being conducted as part of our Silver Jubilee celebration. So today is the third day and we have two lectures. So the first one will be on the topic Yoga and Tourism by Shri Suba Vaidyanathanji. So before I request the speaker to start this session, I would like to give a small introduction of Shri Suba Vaidyanathanji. So Suba Vaidyanathanji has had a basic training in engineering and business studies. For 3 years, for 3 decades, he worked as a banker, and while developing a deep personal practice of yoga and meditation, he has been trained in the Vedas and Upanishads from his childhood and has researched the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali for over a decade. His 2 decades of practice of meditation, silence and solitude, and the studies of the Yoga Sutras from the foundation of the programs that he runs today, which seamlessly connect the ancient work of sutras with contemporary sciences of mind and their integration in our daily life and work of today. He partners his wife Renuka in running Being Sattva, a retreat center in Bali that is built and run on the principles of Sattvic living. So I once again welcome you, sir. So I request your kind self to kindly start your session.
Thank you, Srinivas ji. And Namaste, Agasti ji. Jayaraman ji, thank you very much for inviting me to this session. Today I'm dressed quite differently, and I'm dressed in Balinese clothes. So, and the reason I wanted to come dressed in this manner is I wanted all of you to experience this talk more as a story, an experience which I want you to be part of. Rather than me give a talk and for you to listen, I want you to walk with me on this journey. Let me first start with a few years ago and how a banker, my wife was also a banker, and how we came upon this journey of living what we call our best life and be able to live a life which in our lifetime we want to be able to touch 1 million lives and inspire people to live their best life. This is the engineer and banker and the business graduate and the person with 3 decades of experience translating our culture and our scriptures and making it real and experiential for the world which exists in the Arctic world, which is the world of business, the world outside of India, and also for people in India. So we want to call this live your best life because that is what our culture, tradition, and our scriptures have inspired us, given us the wisdom to do. This is how we came about thinking, when I was a banker, and let me take you back to the story as I promised. In the year 2008, there was a global financial crisis. And though I was a banker for 3 decades, I was under extreme stress, even though I was a person who's supposed to be practicing and living the path of some of our scriptures, very early time practitioner. But even then I felt the stress. I also noticed that everybody around me was feeling the stress. That is when I started the journey as a leader to train my own people on how to deal with this concept called stress. That the problem is not out there, but it is in here. So that is the foundational concept that I was helping them to become aware of and how they could grow from there. As part of that, I ran retreats. And whenever I used to take people to run retreats, this is what yoga tourism at that time for me, my experience was, I never found the right place. I never, even if I found the good location as in the city or a town, I never found the right kind of property. Even if I found the right property, I found that it was too big, too noisy. Even if I found of the right size, the food was not right. And even if the food was right, we found that the ambience was not perfectly created. So, my dear wife Renuka and me decided to do something crazy, which is put in our life savings and create a center where people can come. And our dream was this: as you enter the center, as you walk in, you should feel a change in the energy. You don't have to do anything. As you enter, you should be able to feel it. And then in that kind of space, if you practice yoga, if you discuss culture, wisdom, bring awareness about all of these things, you will walk out inspired to live a different life. This was our simple ambition. So let me walk you through how we have created it, what is the concept behind this, and how many elements go through this. Very, very small elements. And this is what I would say yoga tourism is all about. But let's start at the beginning. And I wanted to show you why this is such an important area. And this is an article I picked up yesterday. Wellness tourism is going to be the biggest area of growth this year, 2022. This is not something in the past. For the next 3 years until 2025, wellness tourism is going to be the center. Why? Everyone during COVID pandemic has come to understand how unhealthy they are, or at least how much they can get better. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, at all levels, how they can all improve. And everyone wants to make an effort. There are a number of locations in the world. In India, Rishikesh is a very popular location for something like this. It's a magnet. Also, it's based in the Himalayas. Of course, there are many other places around India. In Bali and in Asia, Ubud, which is at the center of Bali, is considered to be the center of wellness tourism. Hawaii in the US, Koh Samui in Thailand, Taiwan, all of these are also very popular destinations. Now, yesterday I was discussing with Jairamji, and when after that, I drew this chart, Jairamji, which is, we can sit at home, put the mat, or even simply practice by ourselves. Or nowadays, we can turn on Zoom or any other app and practice with our teacher. We don't have to go anywhere. We can sit at home and practice with our teacher. Third level, we can go to a studio in our own city, and we can have a community and also be with the teacher and with ourselves. We can do the practice. But there is a place for an immersive retreat. All of us as teachers, all of us as students, we go, nowadays, in these years, people have said, oh, I have studied my whole course online, but they don't feel complete because they have not gone to the university, been in the environment, been with their fellow students, been with their gurus, their teachers, been in that space of knowledge and absorb that. So that is what difference between studying from home and studying at the university. The same thing holds good with respect to retreats for any spiritual pursuit, any pursuit of improving ourselves. And that is why immersive becomes a very important part of it. But why would I go to an immersive place which is noisy, which is crowded, which is just like a city, which is, like the place I live in? That is where tourism comes in, because you have to create an experience which is different from being at home. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So I wanted first talk about Ubud and why we chose Ubud. So I'm now going to take you through my own personal experience. So this is like a tour for you, like an experiential retreat. In Bali, especially in Ubud, the fundamental principle that they follow is Tri Hita Karana. I have to live a life true and balanced with myself, balanced with you, which means all my fellow human beings, and balanced with all of creation. So, Tri Hita Karana. This is the fundamental principle of how they live their life. I've shown you two pictures on the left of your screen. First is a big mountain. It's a volcanic mountain called Agung. And there are a few volcanoes in Bali. And there are many mountains which feed the water to the entire rice terraces of Bali. You can see the rice terrace. Below, bottom, you can see the river. In the whole of Bali, there is not one pump, not even one water pump. In Bali, it is called the Water Temple System, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. If those of you who might have heard about it, they decide, the water temples decide how the water will flow at different times of the year. Where the paddy will be planted and sown at what time of the year. So everybody doesn't sow the paddy at the same time. Uphill first, next below, so that the water can be shared. And also at the same time, the beauty of this is the pests do not come. So there is not enough paddy, there is only enough for a small amount. So progressively, they share the water and automatically, naturally, there is pest control. No need for pesticide at all. And Bali's soil is naturally fertile. Tri Hita Karana. The second and most important, I've shown you on the right, on the top right-hand corner, is a 10th century Saraswati temple in the rainforest, which is 20 minutes walk from our place being Satwa. Every time I go to this temple. And there are 7 springs in the temple for us to have a bath and pay our respects to Goddess Saraswati. It is the village temple, and you can see how beautifully it has been maintained in the forest, open setting. For 1,000 years, they have maintained this. There is a sign right next to that, and there is a insignia of the monastery where many monks have attained nirvana. So you can go and sit near that place too. I'm saying this because when you go and choose a location for a retreat, to set up a retreat, or where you are going as a teacher, or you are going as a participant, choose a location of high energy. Because when you walk into the Ubud and walk into this village, you will naturally feel lifted by thousands of years of practice of other monks or other sages who have been there, and how the place has been maintained, how there is no violence in sharing of the water, there is no anger, and how nature is respected. Below, at the bottom, you will see how even today in Bali, the observance of custom. I will show you at the end what is the custom, which there is a celebration happening right now in Bali. I will share with you at the last slide. But every day, thrice a day, offering is made in Bali, even today. The whole of Bali offering is made. I must tell you, there's also once a year, they observe a day of silence called Nepi, where the whole of Bali, including the airport, is shut down for people to stay at home in silence. Total silence. Even the light is not lit. Only the lamp is lit at home. So the energy of the place is very important for us to be able to uplift ourselves. So as a teacher, when you will go to places, or as a student, when you go to places, or when you choose locations to go to, Tirthasthal, as we call it, we go to many places of that sort, the energy of the place makes a difference. So this is why we chose Ubud to set up being Sattva. Our core value is very simple, being Sattva. In everything that we do, we have to be Sattva. And this is the experience we want people, this is the entrance to our place. As you can see, there are no walls. It is open on all sides. You will see water and greenery and forest on the right side, gardens in the middle, a lotus pond in the center. And this is the experience which we people want to have. As they walk in, they should feel embraced by nature. They should feel loved by the birds and the butterflies. That is the experience we want people to have. Straight away, people get into a state of balance, Sattva. So the experience, an appreciation of what is there. And if you notice how we create the experiences, the five senses. Very simple, that we try to invoke the five senses in a manner which brings you to a state of balance. So we want you to walk barefoot. We want you to feel the grass, feel the blades of grass through your feet. We want you to feel the morning dew. And through that, we want you to experience the sense and what is beautiful about the morning. We want you to be able to experience the scent of the flowers. We want you to be able to see the sun rise in front of you. We want you to be able to listen to the sounds of the birds and the flowing water. So with all of this, you get into a state of Sattva. Why do I say this? Wherever you are creating, if you're creating an experience for someone where you're going to teach anything spiritual, first choose a location and also make sure that they start the morning in a manner where they first balance all their senses. Then they are in a state to receive everything that you are about to impart to them, or even have an open discussion about certain topics which are challenging to understand sometimes for the mind. Also, we focus on the five pillars, which is the body, the movement of the body, nutrition, mindfulness, rest is very important, and connection. Connection with nature, connection with each other, and connection with yourself. Trihita Karana. Landscape. So we took a lot of effort to make sure that we did not touch any of the old plants and trees. But at the same time, we brought in plants and trees which would attract butterflies, which would attract the natural dragonflies, the birds, the hummingbirds. All of this, when you walk in there, you should be able to feel the sound. So on one side, you have a forest. On the other side, you have the garden. But the experience is that you are one with nature. There is no separation. It is not that the garden is different from you. You are one with the garden. You are one with the forest. We have monkeys who come. And they are so friendly that they don't expect food from us. And they will walk through our place just like it is home for them too. So we don't disturb them and they don't disturb us either. So one of the important things we had told the architect is wherever the guest goes, they should be able to experience the sound of water and the sensation of water. Because flowing water is what brings us again to a state of Sattva. to a state of balance, to mind the right state. And the main area which I showed you at the beginning, where we sit with the forest on one side, the lake on the other side, and two sides are open. This is the place where most of the discussions on spirituality are held. And people are hearing the sound of water, birds, and crickets. At the same time, the sound of the wind, the fresh air, and the discussions are so beautiful. Right? You don't feel that you are, in having a difficult discussion, because it's so natural. This is a living area. As you can see, even in the living area, we have made sure that you can open the room on three sides and be one with nature. So there is no TV in the room. So we want people to be more connected with nature and more balanced, and not disturbed by everything that is going on in the world, beamed into their room with news. So there is no news because there is no good news. Okay, every news is only bad news, as we can all see. So we don't want them to watch all of this. So this is one of the important things, but also creating the room in a manner where the experience of the room is being one with nature. Food. This is something which we feel is a very, very important to the experience of the people, because the state of mind is based on what we consume. So the food is, of course, sattvic in nature, but we have given different cuisines so that people from different parts are able to experience this. But it is vegetarian and vegan. We don't serve any other form of food, but we experience this so that people are sensitive to their body, and we should be able to serve food which agrees with each one's personal disposition. So in Ayurveda, we call it dosha. So we do take stock of how people's bodies are and allow the food to be consistent with the experience that they would like, which is make sure that the body remains balanced. Now, here is a very important thing which I wanted to mention: open kitchen. Why do you think we have an open kitchen? I wanted to ask this as a question because we have many participants now. Why do you think the kitchen should be open?
The participants can answer in the chat box.
Everybody is very quiet. For transparency, very beautiful. Thank you, Shamli. So that everyone knows what goes in, fresh. Okay, for light, beautiful. You can see hygiene, fantastic, very good. All the right answers. To maintain the hygiene, very good. Excellent.
To experience the ingredients is the other answer.
Smell, beautiful. Experience the ingredients for attractiveness. For people to be able to participate, to develop trust, to participate in the cooking if they want, for peace, openness, for peace, very important. So Sandeep, let me explain this concept to you. To all of us, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time. But there is only one kitchen. So there is tremendous pressure on the kitchen at the time, at mealtime. So in any restaurant, if you go to in any city, in any hotel, if you go to, the most stressful place is the kitchen. So all the anger and the stress goes into the food. And that is what we consume. Right? And because everyone is placing orders at the same time, there is a lot of yelling, shouting going on in the kitchen. But when you open the kitchen, just like what Sandeep said, it is not possible to yell and scream. Everyone has to maintain the peace in the kitchen. And that peace is what goes into the food. And apart from that, of course, you can stand there and watch the cooking happening. You can smell the aroma. You can see the fresh ingredients. You can also participate in the cooking if you want. You can also learn how to cook. So all of this makes it so important to have that open kitchen to be able to participate. I go every year to Ramanashram in South India, and whenever I go to Ramanashram, I am able to walk through the kitchen before going to the dining hall. I don't know whether any of you have been there. You're able to go through the back and walk through the kitchen, and you'll be able to see the joy with which things are being cut, cooked, and participate in that experience itself. It is so beautiful to see how happily people are cooking the food for you and how happily they serve it for you also. So it is important to make sure that the food that is consumed is happily prepared, is prepared with a smile, is prepared with fresh ingredients, and is transparently prepared, and people have the trust as they consume the food. So it is so important because this is what we put into our system during a retreat, right? So frozen screen. Sattvic spaces. I do not know how many people give attention to this, but our yoga pavilion faces the east. You can see in that picture people practicing yoga during sunrise and the sun filtering through into the yoga pavilion. It is important for people to check some of the basics like this when you prepare a setting for practicing something which is important for the body, which is important for the breath, for the prana, important for the mind, and important for our spiritual upliftment. That the direction in which the place is set and how the nature comes into that location is important as from a design feature. If you notice, it is open on all sides, and at the same time, it faces the east. Right? Here, we've created different kinds of meditation spaces, closed like a cave and open as with nature, so that people can experience different kinds of reflection time and meditation time. Why am I saying all this to you? I know that you may think that I am not going to go and create such a retreat center. It is important for you to know what kind of location you choose to go to, or even in your own small space, how to create an experience. And this is what I'm going to talk next about. Simple things that we speak about, sustainable living today. When the open spaces are all open to nature, there is no need for aircon. No air conditioning is required. We only use a fan. We recycle our water and waste. We use solar. So in terms of all of these principles, we make sure that nature is part and is not abused in our place. Now, the first day we bought this land, we placed a Ganesha there, and the place has been chanted into every single day. From the time the land has been ours, we have chanted into that piece of land. Energy of that land is important to observe because that is what uplifts people. We've had so far 100 retreats at our place. Right now, as we speak, there is a yoga retreat going on. It's the first post-pandemic yoga retreat going on. It is from a Singapore group. And they come there 4 times a year for both yoga teacher training and also meditation. And they come there because they say when they come into that space, the energy is shifted. And this can happen only if all the principles I have shared with you are observed. Every little bit is taken care of. But the bhumi, as we treat this as a karma bhumi, our place of dharma and karma, where it comes together. And that is how we have respected that space. Right from the day we open that space. This is something which we should all do in our sacred places. Now, the experience morning, we make sure that in any retreat, people spend time with nature. We call it forest bathing. But there is time for seva, both in the morning and the evening. Every person who comes to a retreat has to perform seva. So it is not that I am a guest and in a hotel. I want people to feel part of it. So you may say it is almost like an ashram, even though it is not an ashram, but we want people to participate in the retreat and be part of it, not to be outside it. That is why seva or morning or evening service is so important when performed by the participant. The evening is very interesting because we have something called stories under the stars, where we get people to sit under the stars and share stories of the day, of the year, something special and uplifting that they have. This is something I want to share again. In any yoga retreat or tour that you go, there are people. The culture of Bali is such that the Balinese people will always keep the smile when they see you. This is our staff who's remained with us for 8 years. And what is beautiful about them is that 80% of them is from a local village. So they bring the authenticity of the village into our center. And they take people to their homes and show them how the Balinese way of living is. If you see the people here, there is one person who's a dancer, there is one person who's a painter. They are all multi-talented, and they show all of this to our guests too. It is very important to understand that when you go to a place, you will people who are helping you create the retreat, if you are the leader or the teacher, or if you're a participant, that they are themselves in a space of sattva. Because only then can they bring you to a state of sattva. You may think that a traditional place like ours, how the principles on which we have worked may not be so appreciated by the world. But we have remained top on TripAdvisor. We are 5-star. We have been Traveler's Choice Award. We have been we've been consistently in the top 10 on TripAdvisor for 8 years. Booking.com, we are 9.6 on 10, and Expedia is 4.9 out of 5. Why I want to share this with you is our way of living, our Sattvic way of living, is truly something which touches people's hearts. And it is something that we should all go back to believing in. And making sure that if you can just bring the simplicity of this Sattvic living into people's lives, their mind is touched, their heart is touched, as is their body. And with that, before they leave, they know that something has changed inside them. This is a path that Renuka and me chose to walk. And our mission, as I said, is to inspire people to live their best life. I run many programs online too. I run 2 meditations a week online for free because I feel it is important for people to have a place to find calm every week so that they're able to be their best after that. Before I close today and open up for questions, which is I feel will be very interesting, I wanted to share with you the concept of Kuningan. That is the festival which is happening today in Bali. So I just wanted to read this little bit of a story. It occurs in Bali every 30 weeks because the Balinese calendar, which like the Indian calendar, is different from the Roman calendar. Or every 210 days, the Balinese calendar circles back. So that is the length of the Balinese calendar. This celebration called Kuningan is done over 10 days and marks the descent and ascent of spirits, notably of ancestors and deities that come down to earth from their heavenly abode. Now, it is very similar to Diwali or Navratri, and that is why it's a 10-day celebration, and is the triumph of Dharma over Adharma. That is how it is celebrated in Bali. As with all Balinese ceremonies, there is a myth and there is a story associated with it. And this is the story of an era called the Majapahit Empire, where there was a Hindu king, a Balinese king, whose name was Mayadenava. Mayadenava was a very arrogant king, full of ego, but he was very strong and nobody could defeat him. And the short story is that it took God, Lord Indra, to come down to earth along with the Devas to fight and defeat the king, the egoistic king. And this was fought in a place called Tempak Sering, which is a temple of the seven springs. This is where the celebration, or this is what celebration of Kuningan marks. The 10th day of this celebration is what is happening. And if you notice here, there are these panjors, what is there in every village, they create these palm-based decorations. And actually there is a competition between villages on which panjor is the best, which village is the best decorated. If you see here, Renuka is in this village, which is amongst the world's prettiest. It's ranked as the top 5 prettiest villages in the world. So that is an experience of what a yoga tour can be for someone. I hope I took you through that, what it can be and how you can create it in different places. You don't have to come to Bali to create it, but it is important for you to choose the right location to go for such an experience. If you are going on a tour yourself, if you're going on a spiritual tour, you want to choose the location. You want to choose where you stay based on how the place is designed, how they offer food, what is the spirit with which they serve you, and how you are able to be there and experience the place and be uplifted before you come back. So that journey has changed your life in a small way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vaidyanathaji. So if one of the participants are having any questions, they can have a few questions. So so this actually helps our students in understanding the practical part while we go out after studying yoga and etc. So they do have many avenues where they can work. They may go as lecturers in they go out for setting up studios or things like that. So for that, your whatever the inputs that you have given and your experience, that would definitely help them out. And even interestingly, in the new national educational policy, so from this year, compulsory subject on tourism has also been advised by the government. So we also have introduced a 2-credit course related to tourism also. So we've been trying for that. So before that, I would like to just ask a small question about this has been the experience part of it. But what is the practical? What are the practical challenges that you have experienced while setting up it, and what are the practical challenges that you experience while maintaining it? I mean, running this kind of a center.
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Srinivasanji, for that question. First, I think setting up the place, it is, as we said, a lot of it for us was to do with the choice of a good architect to design the place. But I must say that when we design and do many of these things, it is complicated. And the challenge is to be able to find the right people. Also, when you have in space like this, honestly, you need money to invest. In this case, we chose to put a lot of our life savings. But if even then we needed to bring some more investment into this place. So it is important to understand that when people venture into something like this, capital is required. And you have to choose capital from the right people who have the same mindset as you. If they don't have the same mindset, they will be pulling you in different direction. So I will give you an example. There are other places where they have been compelled to serve alcohol and non-veg only because their investors are asking for money back very soon. So I'm giving you an example of how getting the right capital is important. The second, after you build a beautiful product, how do you make it known to the world? This is very important, especially when people are learning tourism. They have to learn how to market the product. Marketing, we think, is a very bad word, but actually it is very important to learn to do it also in a manner which is sattvic, which is we should be able to take the message of the product and the romance of the product to people. And channels are there. Like I explained, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Agoda, all of these, there are a number of digital channels nowadays where we have to be present. Second, we have to have a very good website. So digital assets are very important. Digital marketing channels or sales channel, distribution channels are very important for people to understand. Third, it is important to also tie up with some people called offline agents or promotion agents. So if you're starting a studio, you should know which are the websites which promote studios. If you're starting a center like this, you should know which are the websites or offline agents who will promote these, who create packages and market it to people. So marketing is the second important thing. So first is the investment, second is the marketing. Third, it is important to have a financial plan. I will explain this to you. We had a pandemic. 2 years we had no guests. How do you survive and keep the place in order? Today we are able to entertain guests only because it was maintained well. So you have to plan for a difficult time and should have some savings available to keep you running even in that time. I ran many programs to create revenues to make sure that we were able to keep a staff of 10 people to keep the place maintained. So financial planning becomes very important in all of this. I have known so many places which have closed down during the pandemic, and where you need full renovation to bring it back up, people don't have money for it. So 3 things. First is the capital to start the business. Second is to be able to spread the word about the product. The third is the marketing, and the third is proper financial planning and discipline.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat box. So I think this kind of a session is very new to us. So normally, so this is the first time that I think we are trying something from a practical perspective, from application perspective. So, but really, it was a very enriching experience of your center. Yeah.
So I wanted to leave this thought with everybody. You know this, Srinivasanji, somebody like Jayaramanji will understand this very well. And I'm sure many of the other teachers here will also understand this well. But it is important for every student who aspires to become a teacher or to create experiences of this sort, studios or other ways in which to learn to create small experiences, 1 hour, 2 hour, every opportunity, like International Yoga Day is coming next week. People should be willing to create a half an hour experience and learn how to create a holistic experience. All senses have to be involved. So they have to start very young and not to feel shy. And they only, when they start early, will they keep learning the difficulties, the challenges, and they will learn and grow with that.
Sir, I have an observation and a question. One thing is being trained in Samskrita Shastras. So as I was listening to your talk, I was reminded of a couple of quotations from the Shastras themselves. One is that Adhishthanam Tatha Karta Karanancha Pruthak Vidham Vividhascha Pruthak Cheshtaha Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam. So for the success of any activity, as in Bhagavad Gita, we see Adhishthanam is the first thing, the place that we choose to do our work. So, the journey that you took us through in this talk really underlines that fact. Means when we speak of Shastras, mostly means when we, especially in the context of yoga, we discuss more about the techniques of asana, pranayama, etc. Or the mudras or the bandhas or the dhyana techniques, how to focus, where to focus, all that is mentioned a lot. But the place in which we do that, the importance of that was very beautifully brought out, very picturesquely brought out. And also, yeah, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika also very clearly says that Surajye Dharmike Deshe Subhikshe Nirupadrave. So, Ekante Madhika Madhye Sthatavyam Hatha Yogina. So it's a Surajya Dharmika Desha. As you mentioned about the customs and nature friendly and live and let live dharmic way of life. So that is certainly a Surajya established on the principles of Sanatana Dharma. So that is a Surajya Dharmika Desha. Subhiksha, of course, lush green, bountifulness everywhere. Subhiksha Nirupadrava, of course. No one is harming the other. As you mentioned, the monkeys will come, they will go through this thing. So we don't harm them, they don't harm us. So such a way of living, and the Shastras have not missed out on that point also, but we have missed out in the current era, that in this thing. So this was the observation that I wanted to make. The question just slipped out of my mind as I got into the description. Yeah, so it was a great.
I would like to even share that even we in our university, we have developed, set up a holistic healthcare center, which is named Urjaswini Holistic Health and Wellness Center. So we had the opportunity, our head of the department, Professor Kalapani Agasti, and my colleague Mithlesh Bhakre and myself, we had the opportunity, we were given a place. So we, according to our aesthetic sense and etc., we tried to build a yoga studio and Panchakarma and etc., an Ayurvedic and a yoga therapy center also. So even in that way, we had some experience. Even in setting up the experience, that we had a wall dedicated for Shanti Pathas and a wall dedicated for the Yoga Sutras. So in that way, we tried in our this thing also. If you have ever any chance to visit, please do visit our university and our wellness center. So
now the question came back, sir. As I got that gap, the point is our tradition and culture makes us to travel to various Tirtha Kshetras. So there are 51 Shakti Pithas. Everyone has to take up the journey to Kashi Rameshwaram. And there are 108 Divya Deshams of Sri Vaishnava tradition. All this is there. So travel is intrinsic in our culture. But in the context of yoga and also in these in this aspects, I think Indians in general are poor travelers in the context of tourism. When we look at it, of course, from a cultural, religious point of view, travel is embedded in the our tradition. But when it comes to the tourism in the contemporary context, are Indians a bit on the back step in comparison to our culture? So how do we address it to the Indian, basically the Indian masses? Who are our people whom we have to address to in the context of tourism?
So I think it's a very important question. Most of the time, we have, in our own experience, I must say that our experience is quite different from that of other centers in Bali. We have 40% of our guests who are Indians. I would say they may be Indians from different parts of the world, but they are Indians. So that is quite high. In other locations, it is much lower. But I think it's important for, so most of, I would say my reading of this is as follows. When I was young, to where I am now, my interest of travel has become very different. Earlier, we used to travel only to see places because we never had the opportunity to go to see places. So we are very excited to go to a new place and experience that place. So that is the majority of Indians even today. They are still visiting many places because for them that itself is excitement. Whereas there are a lesser set of Indians who want to go and immerse in a place and truly experience the energy of the place. Whether it is within India or other places, but to experience tourism, when I say wellness tourism, it is actually what I meant by is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, uplifting tourism. A tour where I dedicate 1 week of my life every year to uplift myself. That tour may happen anywhere, but it is for the purpose of uplifting myself. That increasingly more and more people have started to do, but it is still at an early stage as far as Indians are concerned. Jayaramanji.
Yes, sir. So that is an area, means that if that is a challenge, that is also an opportunity.
Correct. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
I think it is growing in India nowadays. I think more and more people are observing this. I think slowly it is impacting. It is very nice that, a university like yours, Srinivasan ji, is able to host a talk like this to build awareness in students when they are young. And also for you to create a place like this in the university itself.
Because now the education system is towards implementing and applying the concepts of IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems, and at the same time, generating revenue and employment is also one of the core objectives that we have to look forward. So in that case, this your lecture comes in a very right time. So I once again thank you for your lecture.
Excuse me, just I would like to have some questions.
Yes.
Namaste,
so here Mithilesh Bhakre is our colleague here, working as assistant professor in the Yogic Sciences and Holistic Health Department. Sir.
Namaste, Suba sir. Sir, would like to ask you that in such, health centers and yoga centers, people generally come with two purposes actually, for relaxation also and for some wellness or therapeutic aspect also. So are you handling the second part also, therapies and all that?
Very good question. So we are more focused on wellness and be able to create experiences around preventative areas, not therapeutic areas. That is our main focus. But having said that, we do have clinicians who are based on the Ayurvedic principles, who are close by in Ubud, who we have a tie-up with. and who we are able to bring in when maybe twice or thrice a year when we run more therapeutic retreats. We do have a center at our own place for therapy, which is downstairs, which is a rainforest therapy room. And in that, we are able to do sound therapy, therapy of massage, and different kinds of therapies we're able to do that.
Really nice. And sir, one last question. Sir, as you went through your journey, and center's focus seems to be more on the giving experiences about nature also. I mean, that is a very important part of the yoga center, as you said, that giving experiences of natural living. So in that respect, we have to study a lot of other aspects related to nature welfare, sustainable development also, other than yoga. So have you studied those aspects also, in related aspects related to renewable energy or sustainable development?
So my brother-in-law is a PhD in civil engineering, and Renuka's brother. And so he helped us to design and run our place, set it up. His primary focus is on renewable energy. So we use solar, we do all the recycling, the waste, all of these things has been designed by Shri R.V. Rajan, who's based in the US. So I did not study, but he studied. I am an engineer, but he's more of the person who helped us to design all of this.
Really great, sir. Really great. Very nice session.
So
over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So I think it's the right time. We're on time according to the schedule. So so here we end our first lecture, and this will be followed by the second lecture by Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan, sir. The topic of his lecture is Textual Studies and Research in Yoga, its importance and scope. So before I request Jayaraman sir to start, I would like to just read out a brief introduction of Jayaraman sir. So Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan has earned his PhD in Sanskrit from the University of Madras. His undergraduate degree was in education, philosophy, and English literature, and his MA degree was in Sanskrit with university, first rank in both the degrees and gold medal. Prior to that, he underwent traditional training in the Vedas and Shastras at the Veda Vijnana Gurukulam in Bengaluru under the guidance of Pracharya Kotemane Ramachandra Bhatt. After a decade's service in the Department of Research in Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, Chennai, as director, Dr. Jayaraman Mahadevan now serves as the director of textual research yoga at Indica, that is Indic Academy. So here also, sir, I would like to share that we do have our colleagues from Yoga Vijnana Gurukulam. Our assistant professor in the Department of Vyakarana, Karthik Bhagwat, is also maybe your Satirthya, I would like to say. So I request you to kindly deliver your lectures.
So thank you, Subaji, first for that excellent first session. And then thank you, Srinivasji, for that introduction. And the university authorities, Kalapini Madam and Vice Chancellor, the most respected Malsudra Pennaji, for conceptualizing this lecture series on yoga in the occasion of International Yoga Day. Now, when I look into my talk, it will be a contrast with what was presented previously. So previous talk was very experiential. And then the second talk will be textual. So, but I would also want to emphasize, though it is textual, the very core of my talk also revolves around the aspect that when we speak about textuality or the textual aspects, it is not that we connect it only to theory. It is all about practice, especially in the context of yoga. So how the textual studies have a lot of importance and practical inputs. So it is not only that the texts clarify the theoretical framework, maybe in other disciplines, but in yoga especially, the very central aspect of my talk would be is that the textual studies are very important from the perspective of clarification of practical aspects in yoga. And hence, it is very important to look into, as practice component is important in yoga, because every day you have to do asana, pranayama, the mudras, etc., dhyana, so that you experience it and you are able to convey it better. So the textual study aspect gives a lot of inputs, very practical guidance to make that practice very strong. So that is the very the core or the crux of the talk that I would like to present. I will just share my screen. Just a moment. I hope you are able to see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the role of textual studies in yoga. So when we look at it, I just again have to go to the text to bring in a pramana, an authority. So there is a beautiful shloka in Vyasa Bhashya where he says, Acharya Vyasa in the commentary to Yoga Sutra says, in the Ratambara Tatra Prajna Sutra, in this commentary he says, Agamena Anumanena Dhyanabhyasa Rasena cha Tridha Prakalpayan Prajnam Labhate Yogam Uttamam. So Uttama Yoga, the best yoga, has three components: Agama, Anumana, and Abhyasa Rasa. So these are the three important components of yoga. So Abhyasa, of course, is there. Anumana, inference, is there. We have to think about the teachings. Before that, receiving authentic teachings of yoga, that is very important. And hence it is one of the among the three arms of yoga, so which introduces or which helps us grasp the essence of yoga, along with Abhyasa and Anumana. Agama, the textual knowledge, the knowledge that is there in the scriptures and taught us, imparted to us through the acharyas. So that is a very integral and important part. So which has been emphasized right in the primary commentary to Yoga Sutras. And hence, so Agama, textual study of yoga, is an important component to lead us to Uttama Yoga. So I just practice, I have yoga. I do research, I have yoga. But the one whose practice and also the research and analytical thinking about yoga is well supported by Agama, then that yoga becomes Uttama Yoga, the best yoga. So hence, that is the primary importance given to Agama, the textual study, scriptural study in the practice or in the entire yoga scene. Now, when as I mentioned right in the outset, when we speak about the textual studies, textual study is not limited only to giving us a theoretical framework or the founding principles, etc. Especially, of course, the texts do give us such philosophical truths, the philosophical facets. Means you have this Chaturvyuha Vyavastha, Heyam, Hetu, Hana, Upaya, all those philosophical frameworks, etc. are there in the text. But the importance of textual study can be known when we see that so many practical aspects are also embedded in the textual knowledge. So it is not that we have to switch off the practical side when we are studying texts. So we have to look into the text for practical inputs from yoga, and that is available in plenty, especially when I am speaking from a Samskrita university platform. So we, the Samskrita students who undergo the textual Samskrita literature study, especially in the context of yoga, those who are associated with the department of yoga should have that confidence that the texts have rich practical insights. Because what are yoga texts? They are nothing but the jottings of experiences of the yogis of the past. So if I get a notes of my teacher, who is teaching me asana pranayama. What more treasure I can have than in informing me better about the practice. So these texts are to be seen as the jottings of experiential jottings of our sages, compassionate ancient yogis and abhyasis. Hence, the students of Samskrita, especially who are interested in yoga, should have that confidence that yoga literature has so many practical inputs. Now, I have spoken a lot about it. I will give you examples. How in asana, how in pranayama, how in kriyas, how in mudras, bandhas and dhyana. One example each. Quickly, I will mention. These are the practical aspects, be it in therapy, as mentioned by Subaji, for wellness. All these are very essential aspects to detox, which leads to wellness, and also for therapeutic purposes, which heals, help manage various ailments. These are the fundamental aspects. And how in these aspects, yogic texts give very practical insights, which underline the need, which underlines the need for very systematic, confident study of the text by each and every practitioner of yoga to the extent possible. Now, of course, as I mentioned, philosophical aspects are there. I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to touch about these practical aspects. One example each, though so many examples can be presented. In the context of asana, I'll just move to an example of the Paschimottanasana. It's a very popular, important asana, which also marks how flexible a person is, how fit a person is, ability to touch the knees with one's forehead in the seated position. You can see the asana here. So the image of the asana you can see. Now, there is a shloka about this Paschimottanasana, which defines how it has to be done in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Prasarya padau bhuvi danda rupau dorbhyam padagradvitayam grihitva janu parinyastalata deshaha vasedidam paschimottanamahu. You can see the translation below. Extend the feet on the ground straight like a stick, and then by arms catch hold of the tip of the feet, and then place the forehead on the knees and stay. This is Paschimottana. Now, this is the direct translation. But what are missing in the shloka is, when you extend the feet, the text says Prasarya padau bhuvi danda rupau. It doesn't say whether the feet are to be apart or together. And then it says by arms hold the tip of the feet. So dorbhyam padagra dvitayam grihitva. What is the meaning of the tip of the padagra dvitayam, tip of the feet? Then if we have to guess, then it should be fingers. So which finger? The toe or the other fingers? So that question doesn't come about from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika shloka as such. And so these are some aspects which are not, means, though that the shloka captures the general essence of Paschimottana, then the details are missing. So when we just descend into the commentary, we see those details, practical details, these questions being answered. Dandakarau slishtagulphau prasarya prasaritau krutva. So the ankles of the stretched legs are joined together. So the commentary clarifies that while the legs are to be stretched, as mentioned in the source text, it is the commentary which says that at the ankle region, both the feet are to be joined together. So feet together, that clarification comes from the commentary. And then when it says hold the feet, how to hold the feet? So then akunchita tarjanibhyam bhujabhyam. So the tarjani is the index finger. Akunchita tarjani means the hook shaped. So the fingers, the index fingers are to be shaped just like a hook. And then with those fingers, one has to hold the feet. So minute details as to how to position the fingers even on holding the feet. And then agrabhagau dvayam angushta pradesha yugmam. So what is to be held? The big toes are to be held. So when it says tip of the feet, then it means the angushta or the toe region has to be held. And only this much? No. The commentary goes much more further, and it says that while doing this and bending forward, the lower part of the knee should not come above. Yatha janvado bhagasya bhumer utthanam nasyat tatha kartavyam. So this region, if you can see the mouse moving, so this is the knee. So the lower portion of the knee should not raise above the ground. So much of a detail is there in the commentary. So generally we know Paschimottanasana is bending forward and touching the knees with the forehead, but so much of practical details about the practice of the asana is given in the commentary. So this clarity, no doubt remains, no aspect about the practice of this asana remains. All aspects about this asana has been almost covered by this commentary. So of course, by practicing, one can gain that experiential wisdom. But why to when there is the siddham annam in our shastras, they say the food is ready. Why not use the cooked food, ready food? So then we can develop more insights in the practice when we start from an advantageous position that the texts offer. So hence, this is one example. So of Paschimottanasana, you know how this the text itself says that Paschimottanasana goes on to reduce the jatara udaram karshyam jatara bhagasya. So it makes the abdomen region lean. So whatever is the excess fat there, that is removed. So in such a very important practical asana of a very great significance, we see such practical details coming from the texts. So this is one example from the asana section. Then we go to the pranayama section. All these, as I mentioned, I'm going to give the importance of textual study from the practical aspects only. So asana, next only to asana is pranayama. So this is one popular verse I keep quoting about how the translations are lacking, and when we get into the commentary and detailed literature, we return rich. So there is a very basic shloka which says how to inhale, how to exhale, and how to hold the breath. Because inhalation, exhalation, and holding the breath are the three major components, or only three components in pranayama practices. So the shloka in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the second shloka, 18th shloka of the second chapter says, Yuktam yuktam tyajed vayum, yuktam yuktam cha purayet, yuktam yuktam cha badhniyat, evam siddhim avapnuyat. So tyajed vayum, as the translation reads, exhale gradually, inhale gradually, restrain gradually, and siddhi is attained. Of course, in the Moola Shloka also, as there is a repeat of gradually, in the source text also we see yuktam yuktam is repeated. So what is yuktam yuktam in inhalation? What is yuktam yuktam in exhalation? And what is yuktam yuktam in hold? The word gradually, or the translation gradually, does not capture anything at all about, or does not inform us much about the inhalation or exhalation or holding of the breath. Now again, when we are into the further textual commentary sources, then what we see, what is the meaning of yuktam yuktam? We see that vayum pranam yuktam yuktam tyajet rechana kale shanai shanaireva rechayet na vegataha ityarthaha. So what is yuktam yuktam in the context of exhalation? What is gradual? I don't know whether gradual is the right translation. So what is exhalation? Yuktam, appropriate. Actually, appropriate would be the right translation. So what is appropriateness in exhalation? Shanaihi, shanaihi eva. Slow exhalation. That is appropriate exhalation. Na vegataha. So yuktam, yuktam in exhalation is slow exhalation and not fast exhalation. This is a thumb rule in exhalation across all techniques of pranayama, be it Surya Bedana, Chandra Bedana, Nadi Shodhana, Ujjayi, Sitkari, Shitali, name the pranayama technique. Whenever there is an exhalation, it should only be slow. So one should never rush with the exhalation. Then what is yuktam, yuktam in inhalation? Here the commentator says, yuktam, yuktam, nacha alpam, nacha adhikam purayet. So in the process of inhalation, what is yuktam in this context is neither more than the lung capacity nor less than the lung capacity. How much you can inhale, it should be the quantity here which matters. So it should neither be more nor be less. The appropriate amount of or the quantity of breath you have to inhale. So one should examine how much one should not exert oneself too much in holding or kind of inhaling too much beyond one's capability. So while exhalation, yuktam, yuktam refers to the pace. In inhalation, it is the yuktam, yuktam refers to the quantity. So, and then later it is said, if one inhales more improperly, one practices, then what happens? Hikka, shwasascha, kasascha, shirah, karna, akshi, vedana, all those problems will come. Constant hiccups will come, headache, pain in the ears, pain in the all the sinus region, all that will be experienced. So the quantity here is the yuktam, yuktam puraye. And then what is yuktam badhniyat? What is yuktam in holding the breath? Jalandhara bandhadi yuktam badhniyat. So practicing the jalandhara bandha, mula bandha and udyana bandha. Not merely holding, that is inhaling and merely holding the breath. You have to practice the three bandhas while you retain the breath within. That is the right way of holding the breath within. That is the appropriate way of holding the breath within. And this practical rule which applies across the pranayama techniques, which is a foundational information which everyone should remember, that comes from the textual sources only. So that there is no theory here. It's all about practice. As I mentioned, these are practical jotting downs. So commentary, when we hear of Samskrita, when we hear of commentary literature, immediately the mind is switched off. But when we see that it comes with such a pervasive inputs, the inputs which pervade all the techniques of pranayama, then we need to see how valuable this textual study becomes. So this is an example from the pranayama aspect. There are more such aspects. Just when we study the text, there is one more example I can just in a passing manner give. Is that recently I published a paper, I worked on a paper on one sutra, which is Pratyardana Vidharanabhyam va Pranasya. You know that the sutra, 34th sutra in the first chapter, one among the sutras which leads to Chitta Prasadanam. So when I explored the sutra with the commentary literature, about some 15 commentaries, then I saw some 9 pranayama techniques mentioned there. So in my paper, I present that 9 pranayama techniques are there. It has been published in Journal of Applied Consciousness Studies recently. So, so such is the wealth. I'm just not going into the details of it, that the commentary literature, which is not mentioned, I also discuss in that paper that these pranayama techniques lie hidden in the commentary literature, which is not the usual way. Even in the Hatha Yoga texts, which speak more about pranayama, we don't find those techniques. So that when we see the textual lore, it holds so many surprises for us. So hence it is worth pursuing these textual sources. And there are so many other examples on pranayama, but I just gave a couple of examples on pranayama and the textual inputs in that regard. Now let's move to the kriyas. Another example for Kriya from Kriyas, you know, there are Nauli, Vasti, Dhauti, Trataka, Kapalabhati. All these are the Kriyas. And in Hatha Yoga tradition, these are the Kriyas which are to be done to cleanse oneself so that one prepares oneself better for the Pranayama practice. And these practices also have therapeutic implications. And also they also hold the detox value in them. So one practice I just chose one example. Again, the value or utility of the practical utility of textual wisdom. Just try to bringing it out here. Dhauti karma, dhauti. So it involves generally to swallow cloth and bring it out in a yogic prescribed manner. So there again the shloka reads, Chaturangula vistaram, hasta panchadashayatam, guru upadishta margena, siktam vastram shanair graset, punah pratyahare chetat, uditam dhauti karma tat. You can read the translation here. It says, swallow, slowly swallow a wet piece of cloth, 4 fingers broad and 15 spans long, according to the instructions of the Guru, and draw it out again. This process is called as dhauti. So here again we see that the word shanaihi holds the key. So should I slowly, means does that mean only the pace of it? Slowly should I swallow, or is there any secrets hidden behind the swallowing of the cloth? So this is the photo image that you see. The commentator goes out of the way in giving so many details about this dhauti karma. Shanaihi means mandam mandam, slowly slowly. Of course, the pace, one should not rush through, thrust the entire cloth into the mouth. One has to do it slowly, no doubt. And also shanaihi also involves kinchit kinchit, little by little. So the slowness of the activity and then the amount of cloth should also be little by little. And how do we understand the little by little? It is further clarified. The commentator Brahmananda, the Jyotsna commentator, says, Ditiye dine hastadvayam, Tritiye dine hastatrayam, evam dinavridhya hastamatram adhikam graset. So in the first day, swallow about 1 span of cloth. On the second day, 2 spans of cloth. On the third day, 3 spans of cloth. So as the day progresses, an incremental movement to the prescribed act of doing it. Does the commentary state only that much? It has further information when it says, Tasya prantam rajadanta madhye lagnam kritva nauli karmana udarasthalam samyak chalaye. So what happens is, after the cloth, the entire 15 span cloth is gone inside, hold the last end of the cloth with the teeth. All this is not found in the source text. Now, in the yoga scene, what's happening? In the yoga scene, whenever there is textual study, they read the shloka. No, I don't think the shloka is ever read. People read the translation and then they complete the syllabus and move ahead. But if some time is spent in reading the commentary also, we see so many inputs where all that is missed or all that is stated in brief in the commentary has been very systematically expounded with practical insights in the commentary. When he says, after the cloth has gone in, the prescribed quantity of cloth has gone in, the last end has to be caught by the teeth, and then one has to practice nauli, so that all the impurities are released from their respective place, and the cloth captures all those impurities and then drawing it out. So this element of doing nauli after swallowing the cloth is not indicated in the verse, but the commentary gives. So this is the additional input that we see. So again, brings out the unforeseen dimensions of the practice of yoga. So textual study will lead us to more practical details of the practice. And the point is, one becomes more confident. So in doing it, and saying it. Yes, this is how it has been stated, and this is how I will do it. So such confidence also when it comes from an authority. So practical details give us this confidence to practice. Then we quickly move to, so we saw asana, pranayama, kriyas. Then we move to mudras. Mudras are also very important. We see in the context of awakening the kundalini, allowing the prana into the sushumna. For all these processes, the practice of mudra is very important, and they also hold a lot of therapeutic value, these mudras. So we'll just see the very meaning of the word mudra. So what is the general translation we see to the word mudra? For example, Mahamudra. In one of the websites, we see the great seal, Mahamudra, the great seal. Maha is great, mighty, strong. Mudra, seal, sealing, shutting, closing. So you can also see the image here. So is Mahamudra a great seal or a great walrus? We don't know. But what do the commentaries say? The commentaries beautifully clarify. It has a lot of impact on how we practice. See, when you say seal, there is an element. When I seal something, I do it with all force. So there is an element of force there when I translate it as a seal or lock or seal or something like that. There is an element of force there. But how does the commentator interpret the word mudra? He says, he gives the etymology this way: Maha kleshan maranadin doshan mudrayati shamayati iti mudra iti vyutpattihi. Mahamudra iti vyutpattihi. So mudra is not where you lock and seal certain thing. Mudra is the practice by which things are pacified. Things subside, afflictions, doshas, vata pitta kapha, all these are pacified. And so when we read this interpretation, the very approach, the very attitude to the practice is changed. It's not that I'm going to seal or lock or pressurize myself. I'm going to do it gradually. I'm going to reach the goal gradually. But the very meaning of the word is, this practice is going to pacify my problems. So hence towards that I will gradually move. So hence this also, the very etymology that the texts present bring a paradigm shift in how we look at the practice, how we look at asana. The same problem lies with the interpretation of the word hatha also. Hatha is generally translated as force. So let me force myself into various practices, whereas hatha yoga is presented as pranapana sanyoga, and then making of the conjunction of prana and apana, channelizing it into the sushumna. So the very vyutpatti, the very etymology, when we pause and look at it, the very attitude towards the practice changes. And hence this is, we say that ahimsa is a very great quality. First we have to practice on ourselves. So in the practice of yoga, if we have to bring in ahimsa, we have to be self-compassionate, not bothering or mortifying oneself. Then one has to go to the text and get the real spirit of why certain things are done, why certain things are named in a particular manner. So that is the important critical input that the texts give. So that is the value of textual this thing. And then finally the bandhas. So bandhas and dhyana, if time permits, we'll just two more examples. One is the bandhas. Now we come to the again bandha, the Udyana bandha, Mula bandha and Jalandhara bandha. These are the three fundamental bandhas, and the implication of the practice of the bandhas in the pranayama was also mentioned earlier. That is what makes the pranayama proper. Means when we do the pranayama, that is the kumbhaka component, antah kumbhaka component, when we do it with the three bandhas, only then the desired outcome of the particular pranayama, be it Surya Bedana, Ujjayi, Sitkari, Shitali, whatever be the pranayama, if the kumbhaka component is done with the bandhas only, the outcome, the desired outcome is achieved. So we see the verse on the Mula bandha, how it is done. Now the text also gives us the hint as to verify whether I am doing the technique aspect is of course there. We have spoken about the technique aspect in the Paschimottanha, etc. the technique aspect of the practice of bandha is there, but the text also says, especially the commentary literature, it also says whether it also gives a hint on how to know whether I am doing this Mula Bandha properly or not. So the commentator says, Yadi Mula Bandhe Krite Dhatu Kshayaha Vishtambhaha Agnimandyam Nadamandyam Gutika Samuhakaram Ajasyeva Purisham Syat Mula Bandhaha Samyak Nagnataha Iti Bodhyam. See, it is as if a live teacher is sitting. So the teachers have been immortalized. See, the teacher will be very careful about the health and well-being of his student. So similarly, the text is also, the text which is penned by one such compassionate teacher gives these precautions. So these are again not found in the source text. We have to come down to the commentary level when we see that a deterioration of the dhatus, constipation, less appetite, dullness in nada, and then the feces become like small balls. If all these are experienced, then the practice of Mula Bandha is not done properly. So one has to go back to the basics and then try to do the Mula Bandha properly. So which is a very practical insight. So one can observe. So by taking this insight, input from the text, one can observe about one's own status of health after doing the Mula Bandha. And then if these indications are there, then my Mula Bandha is not proper. Then Yadi Dhatu Pushtihi, Samyak Malashuddhihi, Agni Deeptihi, Samyak Nadabhivyaktihi Syat, Tada Jneyam Mula Bandhaha Samyak Jnataha Iti. On the other hand, if there is the nourishment of the dhatus, good bowel movement, good appetite, nada manifestation, then the practice is correct. So hence, as a very compassionate teacher would do in correcting or giving the right indications and precautions and hints to maintain the good health of the student, the commentary literature goes the distance, goes the extra mile in clarifying as to what are the insights or inputs or the precautions on Mula Bandha. So again, the utility, practically one can observe and understand. So they have observed it, they had experienced it. They don't want us to go through the same trial and error process. So if we take heed of this, we can reduce suffering and do the yoga practice. Dukkha Sanyoga Viyoga. As yoga is defined as Dukkha Sanyoga Viyoga, so that Dukkha Sanyoga Viyoga, that is overcoming yoga, should not become suffering. Because if we take heed to these practical insights, then it will be very a pleasant experience towards the Sattvika Sukha. So, and then the final example that I want to present is about Dhyana. Again, Dhyana is again a very integral component of yoga. And then one famous shloka from the Bhagavad Gita is there about Dhyana. Again, practical inputs. Samam kaya shirogrivam dharayan achalam sthiraha samprekshya nasikagram swam dishascha anavalokayan. So this is one famous shloka where we know Samam kaya shirogrivam, the body, everything, the head, neck, and then the spine, everything should be erect while sitting for dhyana. This is from the 6th chapter, Dhyana Yoga. And then Dharayan. So all this have to be held in a straight line and also firmly without shaking. And then the critical point here, Samprekshya Nasikagram Swam. One should gaze at the tip of the nose. And then Dishascha Anavalokayan. One should not allow one's gaze to wander in various directions around. Now, the practical input that comes here is that what is the meaning of Samprekshya Nasikagram? So, should we gaze at the tip of the nose? Sometimes many people would have experienced trying to do this because this is a very fundamental input on dhyana. So, when we try to gaze at the tip of the nose, sometimes some people may also feel a sense of pain, discomfort, etc. doing this. So what is the purpose should we really gaze at the tip of the nose? So to that, the commentary of Acharya Shankara Bhagavatpada gives us the hint as to what really is intended by gazing at the tip of the, should we literally gaze at the tip of the nose? That clarification is given by Acharya. Nahi swanasikagra samprekshanamiha vidhitsitam. So Acharya at the very beginning clarifies, it is not an injunction to gaze one's tip of the nose. No, it is not a practice. Just like in Paschimottanasana, bend forward and keep your forehead on the knees. So that is an injunction. One has to do that. But gazing the tip of the nose should not be taken as an injunction. It's not a vidhi here. It's not vidhitsitam. It's not the purpose is not to gaze the tip of the nose. Kim tarihi chakshushaha drishti sannipataha means the focused nature, the non-wandering, non-wavering nature of the drishti, the gaze, that is what is intended, and it is not a practical gazing on the tip of the nose, which is the intended injunction here. Such a antahkarana samadhana apekshaha vivakshitaha swanasikagra samprekshanameva ched vivakshitam. So the very purpose is, if the gaze stays closer, then the mind will also be settled. So it is not that so the bringing the gaze closer to oneself, only that much is intended here, that one should not mindfully or try to with great effort gaze the tip of the nose. So that will lead to a lot of discomfort, and that is also not the purpose of dhyana. The dhyana, we don't meditate upon the tip of the nose. Acharya clarifies, Swanasikagra samprekshanameva ched vivakshitam manaha tatraiva samadhiyata natmani. So the purpose is meditation upon the Atman, the indwelling consciousness. So that is what is the object of meditation. If gazing the tip of the nose is what is to be achieved, just like bending forward and touching the knees with the forehead. So in Paschimottanasana, whoever wants to do, they will try invariably to try to put their forehead on the knees. So because there will be everyone around will be doing, so I should also do that. So such a kind of activity they will be intent upon. As they say in the Krishnamacharya tradition, the form and the function. In the asana practice, there is a particular form, a particular configuration of the asana to be achieved. If that configuration sometimes may not be achieved because of the stiffness of the body and various other conditions, the function that it performs, so what it intends to bring out. So if that can be brought out, if a person is unable to sit down and do that Paschimottanasana, allow him to sit on a chair and allow him to bend the knee and let him bend forward. So the function is executed, but the form may not be as has been prescribed. So the point is, while the form may not be there, but the function will be there. So the same or the same idea comes out here, that the form here is not important. That is, gazing the tip of the nose is what is not to be done, or else everyone will be intent on gazing the nose, tip of the nose only. So the idea is just bring the gaze closer to oneself, because the focus is Atmanihi manasaha samadhanam Atma samstham manah krutva. So later in the shloka, so in the 25th shloka, what is the object of meditation? Not the tip of the nose. Atma samstham manaha. Mind should be meditating or focusing upon the Atman consciousness and not the tip of the nose. Tasmat iva shabda lopena akshnoho drishti sannipataha eva samprekshya ityuchyate. So when you read the Mula Shloka Samprekshya, Acharya says a word has an invisible presence there. What is the invisibly present word there? Iva. Samprekshya iva. As if gazing the tip of the nose. So that as if has to be supplied there. So only then the one will be on course towards meditating upon the Atman, or else by literally following it, the pain in the eyes, discomfort, and a deflection from the main course or the main purpose, that will also happen. So such practical insights, again, from the commentary, from the textual lore, from great acharyas, that we find. So all the examples that we have seen are from the practical aspects, asana, pranayama, mudras, bandhas, kriya, and even dhyana, and even philosophically. I'm not going into that. Elsewhere, I presented a paper where how on a World Philosophy Day organized at Kanchipuram, how the commentaries are rich in philosophical insights also. I brought out some 10 points as to how beautifully we are guided through the yogic textual wisdom in a very compact and systematic manner. So that is also there, and this is also there. So both philosophical clarity, preciseness, and logical and compactness, so that is there, and very practical insights on asana, pranayama, kriya, mudra, bandhas for wellness and health, that is also there, which is most often missed in the practices or in yoga education. When we speak of yoga education, this level of immersion or this level of study of the texts are missing. Now when we see, now I'm slowly towards wrapping up. I think I've given the examples and established the importance, or try to bring about or bring your notice to the importance of the textual study. Now, what is the current situation? Now, when we look into Ayurveda studies, what has happened to textual, especially the Samskrita textual study, Samskrita textual immersion to Ayurveda, means we see that earlier Ayurveda was studied as a Shastra, 3 years of Padavakya Pramana Shastras, and then the later 3 years people studied Charaka Sushruta Samhita in Samskrita itself. So such was the level of immersion into Samskrita each Ayurveda Vaidya underwent. Now everything has been translated into English, and most Western practices have come into it, and then slowly the space of Samskrita study in Ayurvedic courses have reduced. I was discussing with a Ayurveda professor, Samskrita scholar in Ayurveda field. So earlier it was this way: 3 years of rigorous training in Samskrita, and then one takes up the study of Charaka Sushruta Samhita. Then later 150 hours, then later 90 hours. In the entire Ayurveda Vaidya course, 150 hours of Samskrita. Then it shrunk to 90 hours of study of Samskrita as a paper. Then 60 hours of study of Samskrita into paper. No one wants to read Samskrita. Everyone looks into the translation. But as I have shown, so many places, the translators miss it, take it literally, nothing like a practical immersion into Samskrita. And when we look at, when we compare, so such a state, now yoga is slowly coming into the mainstream of education now. It is the right time to discuss this aspect, the proportion of textual Samskrita studies in the yogic field. We see varied institutions offering yoga courses, the yoga universities, traditional yoga institutions, other accredited yoga centers are there. General universities having yoga departments. Some offer MSc degree, the science-oriented degree. Some offer MA, which is arts-oriented, and general, and they are also basically centered on translation-oriented material only in whatever course duration. So whether it is yoga is a science, or whether yoga is such a textual this thing, there is a variety of approaches in this. Now, in this situation, again, what is the role or what is the position of Samskrita? How much of a textual inputs we can share with the students of yoga, which is very valuable, as we have discussed. So it is in this context, the work of Samskrita universities like Kavikula Guru Kalidasa Samskrita University. We have some 10-15 Samskrita universities. So I feel the yoga courses that are being offered in Samskrita University, primarily. So in these Samskrita universities, of course, are already giving a lot of emphasis, and these are the places where one should go to get into the deeper textual aspects of yoga. So that is one level. There is another level. No, I am already a practitioner. So how do I immerse myself in these textual aspects? I am already a professional in yoga. So then how is there a possibility? Again, there are courses, a project upon which I worked as a project lead. Applied yoga Samskrita books are there, which is Yogasya Bhasha with 4 levels. You get into yoga and Samskrita simultaneously. A 2-year course, self-learning, self-paced with video support. All these courses are there. So we are lucky to live in such an era where we have such material also, which has been thought out and has been brought out. So at whichever stage I am as a professional or doing a PhD, so we can enroll and slowly get into the immersion into the textual aspect. And even for those the yoga institutes or whichever university, general university or whatever setup is running yoga courses, they can think of short-term CEUs, just like in medical profession. The CEUs are there to intensify knowledge or complement the existing knowledge or update existing knowledge. Some textual immersions on asana, on pranayama, on mudras, on bandhas, with the commentary inputs could be organized, and which will enrich the inputs and update the ideas about the authentic agama. We spoke about agama initially, so that can be facilitated by these approaches and programs. So this is about the textual study aspect, textual research. A lot desires to be done in the textual, while this is the potential, this is the value of yoga texts. So the potential. So, but how much of work? Of course, in various places, people are doing PhDs on yoga and various subjects. So there should be a systematic approach, concerted approach. The lower criticism in Yoga Sutras, the Vyasa Bhashya and primary commentaries themselves have not been critically edited, as far as I am aware. The original proper readings, that itself has to be fixed. A few of the commentaries have been critically edited, but the primary texts themselves, their critical commentary remains to be done. Such major projects, just like the critical commentary, the critical edition of Ramayana and Mahabharata was done. This is a massive project, but has to be done for the welfare or for the long-term foundational well-being of the system itself. So these fundamental works of fixing the readings of the text, which we call as lower criticism in textual analysis, that has to be done. And then higher criticism, once the lower criticism is done, the higher criticism comes into place, where we analyze the contribution of the text to the particular field. And of course, so many manuscripts are there to be edited. A lot of work has to be undertaken in that direction. And translation of works in regional languages is a huge gap. Initially, when the printing press was, with the advent of printing press in our country, various regional languages, there was a flurry of publications in regional languages. Some 150 years ago, you can see, for example, for Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there was a Tamil translation 100 years ago. They did it. For Yoga Sutra, yes, there are translations in Yench, but it is 100-year-old Tamil. So if one reads that, one may not understand it, because that is more Samskritamaya Tamil. So, but for the current day, so these authentic texts have to be brought in. See, after every 100 year or every 50 year, there is a need to work on it. I don't say that there is not much authentic literature in regional languages. There is. Lot of translations have been done. But one thing is, most teaching of yoga happens in English. So we don't look into the regional work that has already been done. For example, the nationalist poet Subramanya Bharati has written a commentary, which is his own unique perspective. He has written a Tamil commentary on Yoga Sutra, but we don't study it because all our focus is on the English translations and English interpretations, unfortunately. So the regional languages like Tamil, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada already will possess works done by very learned minds. So they have to be brought into the syllabus, number one. Number two, they have to be retranslated. The texts have to be retranslated to be appropriate for the current day changes that the language has brought upon itself. So hence, contemporizing the translation, that's a massive task that remains to be done. And most of our gaze or kind of transaction about yoga, unfortunately, remains in English only. So including this talk, I'm speaking in English only about this thing. So that is another lacuna in textual research in yoga, work to be done. And then, of course, certain, depending upon the cultural and civilizational background, certain biased scholarship from the West, etc., when they are expressed, they have to be countered. So for that, the textual orientation has to be given. One has to go to the text, understand the context, the etymology, the lexicon, the context, everything has to be understood. And these biased scholarship should also be countered. For that also, time and energy and resources are to be spent, or else there will be the narrative setting is what is discussed a lot these days. So if we don't present the right narrative, then whatever is set, we have to, unfortunately, complainingly or grudgingly, we have to follow that, unfortunately. So textual research also involves correcting the biased narratives, which again, we don't find much activity on this happening here in our country. So this is a desideratum in research. And another important aspect in textual research is yoga is also Indian knowledge system, where again the science is trying to evaluate, or has already been evaluating yoga since so many decades. Some 50, 60, 70 years of scientific research in yoga itself is there available. So many publications are there. If one goes to PubMed is the public medical publication, which is a repository of research papers from 1950s, 1960s. You find research papers on yoga, scientific research papers on yoga. But the problem here is most scientists who work on the yogic practices have been far removed from what the texts speak. So those inputs, so are they trained in Sanskrita? Can they mine information from the text? So these practical information, so that they can be applied and seen. Are the texts being validated, or simply someone is doing a particular practice, I am also doing, and I'm just evaluating it. So what is the basis of evaluation? So recently I had an opportunity to collaborate with one of the most senior scientists in the field of yoga, where it's under publication, Method to Practice Yoga Breathing, a comparison of traditional texts and PubMed indexed research. So already so many papers on pranayama is there. So we have the agama sources. So how far are is the gulf between the methods that are evaluated in scientific papers and what are all the inputs that are missed from the textual sources? So we took up such a study, which is under peer review. So in this way, bringing together of textual people and the scientific community, it also has to happen. Such conventions or such collaborative efforts should also have to happen. Only then again we can establish yoga in a very firm footing, or else the variations and the diversions and the divisions and the dilutions, unfortunately, will also happen. So even if the scientific research and the textual study goes together, if we gulf the bridge, if we gulf the gap between, if we reduce the gap between these two aspects, then more useful and durable and repeatable scientific outcomes from yogic practices can be unearthed in a much more useful manner. So that's why in the current context of interest in Indian knowledge system, so this bridge has to be built. Such bridges have to be built, and there also the role of yoga textual studies are there. So when there is a lot of importance about the therapeutic wellness oriented benefits on yoga is there, centers for excellence in yoga textual studies are to be instituted. So, and resources, time, energy, all those are to be invested in them, so that as we strengthen the foundation, the superstructure will be durable. So many other project ideas are there as to what has to be done in the textual research arena. I'm not going to elaborate upon them. So many foundational, fundamental aspects remain to be done, are there in the textual aspects of yoga. If so, all this brings to the point that textual study, as I mentioned basically in the beginning, is not only to clarify the theoretical framework, especially in yoga, it has a lot of practical implications on the quality of practice and the outcome of yoga. So that's why I finish with one quotation again. I started with a quotation from Vyasa. I again end with a quotation from Sage Vyasa's commentary to Yoga Sutra, where he says, Swadhyayad yogamasita, yogat swadhyaya mamane, swadhyaya yoga sanyuktya paramatma prakashate. So swadhyaya and yoga should go together. Only then the ultimate goal of reaching that pure consciousness, Swarupe Avasthanam, that Paramatman can be attained, one can be established in that Sachidananda Swarupa, the ultimate happiness, that bliss everyone seeks, that could be achieved. So with these words, I conclude my talk.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a wonderful, enriching experience. So if there are any questions, please raise your hand so that I can unmute. I think there was a raised hand from Anjor Dikshit. If you wish to talk, you can talk.
Namaste. My voice is audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for the wonderful session, Jayaramanji. My question is, like you mentioned, we start with the original text and then we move to reference material or commentaries on them. And then the knowledge is understood in depth with practical understanding or actual practice. So here I want to understand from a very layman's perspective, when a person who wants to get an in-depth understanding of things, so there is so much material available, especially the commentaries on various subjects. So let's say we define a subject, like say I want to start with Hatha Yoga. So how do I curate the commentaries? How do I decide where to start from? How do I decide which would be the parameters to ascertain which commentaries or which sources should be chosen? So this is my question.
Wonderful, madam. So the basic aspect is we have to do certain basic things, means getting the basics right. That is very important, especially in from the point of view of yoga. What is fundamental is asana, pranayama, mudras, bandhas and kriyas. These are the 5 fundamental aspects. In that regard, what is the 2 texts that I would prescribe? A sound study which would put us on a firm dridha bhumi would be Hatha Yoga Pradipika and its commentary Jyotsna. Of course, there are n number of Hatha Yoga texts that are available, but a solid training in Hatha Yoga Pradipika and also a study of the Jyotsna commentary. So that would clarify the fundamentals of all that is needed to be known about asana, pranayama, the approaches, the framework, the purpose, all that would be clarified in these 2 texts. And then these are enough to clarify or kind of guide us and orient us towards the right path. And all other further texts like Yoga Yajnavalkya Samhita, Vasishta Samhita, Gheranda Samhita, etc. will give us additional inputs. So this basic grounding, especially in the Hatha Yoga context, I will prescribe these 2 texts, a thorough studying, thorough grounding on these 2 texts. Our Shastras also have the same approach. ekasmin api yasyeha shastre labdhaspeda matihi sa shastram anyadapi ashu yuktignatvad prabudhyate. This is about tantra yuktis, where if we get to the core of one shastra, especially one shastra treatise or one treatise in one shastra, then we will get an understanding about in which direction the wind is blowing. We will get a grasp of it, and then later other information, other ideas we can build up. But this is foundational, fundamental.
Thank you, sir. So there is another question: when one should practice bandha, like before pranayama or after pranayama?
As I mentioned, the bandhas come into play when I inhale and hold the breath. According to Hatha Yoga Pradipika, after inhalation, we hold the breath. While holding the breath, Jalandhara Bandha, Mula Bandha, and Udyana Bandha are done. And then this is ideal, the ideal way of doing it. It is not that on the very first day when I start pranayama, I do it with the bandhas. Never at all. It is not at all prescribed. So initially, we have to observe the breath. Then we have to have slow inhalation and slow exhalation. Then gradually, the hold component will be introduced. And after some time, if the teacher understands that the student has a fair amount of control over his inhalation, exhalation, holding capacities, then the bandhas are introduced. So along with the text, the practice tradition also plays an important role. It is not that on the first day I jump into it. So though bandhas accompany the kumbhaka component, so the answer, straightforward answer is bandhas accompany the antah kumbhaka component, but not to be done on the very first day. That precaution should be had.
There is a additional question from Anjur Dikshit only. In general, also, I would like to understand how to curate material for a particular subject or topic.
Yes, there are no shortcuts, madam. There are no shortcuts. For example, to get to resources on yoga, I can give you one hint. There are so many such sources from where we get. I can give a hint to a few sources. There is this Encyclopedia of Indian Philosophy. On Encyclopedia of Indian Philosophy is, I think, a 27-volume book to a series where each and every system of philosophy has been, be it Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, even Buddhism, all that is being documented, and many volumes have already emerged. So one of the volumes is a bibliography volume. A bibliography volume where you can see so many research papers and publications on yoga. I think, if I remember right, about 900 sources, bibliographical sources of yoga has been quoted in that bibliographical volume of the Encyclopedia of Indian Philosophy. That may be the starting point for you to search for the appropriate. So 900 entries is a very good starting point. From there, you can branch out. Of course, if you want to search the commentaries directly for information, as part of my activity in Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, so we created a website called Yoga Vaisharadi, where we have digitized 15 commentaries, and one can search for various terminologies of those in them, and then gather inputs from that, and then go into the translations, interpretations, and then build one's thesis or theory based on that. And of
Yoga
course,
Vaisharadi is a wonderful repository. Yoga Vaisharadi is a wonderful repository. I would suggest each and every student of yoga to kindly once go and check out. It is very useful. I myself personally got used to it very long.
Thank you very much, Srinivas. Of course, along with the Yoga Sutra and its 15 commentaries, we have this with Jyotsna, the Sankhya Karika, and also I think we have added this Gaudapada Karika also. So yeah.
So So I think we'll have any other further questions. So we'll and once again, thank you for the both speakers of today, Suba Vaidyanathan ji and Jayaraman ji, for very informative talks. And tomorrow we'll be having 2 lectures. One by Dr. Ashish Pandey of IIT Bombay on yoga through the lens of psychology, and the second one by Mr. Parikshiti Maishpurkar on quantum consciousness. So these two are also very vibrant topics related to yoga, one on psychology and one on consciousness. So these will be there tomorrow. The first will be at 7 p.m. and the second one followed 8 p.m. So we'll again be meeting tomorrow at the same time, that is 7 p.m. So we'll wrap up the session by the recitation of Shanti Mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Santu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, ji. Namaste.